Hey everyone, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about something that has been on my mind for the last few days, and probably longer than that, but it's been on my mind in terms of something to share as a topic in one of these videos. And what has been on my mind is the idea that we have patterns playing out in our life every day, whether we realize it consciously or unconsciously, and that these patterns and patterns can also be rooted in beliefs and experiences, but these patterns are playing out in a way that we may not be aware of. And that means that these patterns are in some ways, dictating the narrative of what happens in our everyday life. And as we bring awareness to these patterns, then we can start to shift and change the trajectory of where things are headed in our life. And we can start to change the situations and um, I guess, the narrative that happens on a daily basis. And I often think of how we share the drama that is happening in our life with others, and how, what is it you tell your friends about your everyday? What is it what is the view you have of the world? Is the world loving and supportive and kind, or do you feel like everyone is out to get you? And the thing about those kind of beliefs and those stories is that they're rooted very much in these patterns that exist in our life. So I'm just going to go ahead and use an example of one of these patterns in my life, and noted that this particular pattern is something that I could talk about on its own. So I'll definitely do a video about this pattern, a separate video about this pattern in the future for sure. And so anyway, the pattern that plays out in my life, and I like to call myself, a recovering people pleaser, and that is, of course, people pleasing. Just named it. And the thing about people pleasing is that it is rooted in the idea and sort of a misconception as an adult, but as a child, it makes total sense. In my case, I grew up in an environment that was very unpredictable. Often there was a lot of fighting in the evenings. And so I set out to try and impact that. I would influence what was going on, or at least try to. But it was a very selfish act. I mean, I was trying to influence what was happening in my environment simply for the sake of, if I can influence what's going on in my environment, then I'll feel better. And the thing about that is that that became a pattern. So I started to focus outward, to look at what's going on outside of me. What can I do to influence what's going on outside of me? And later in life, that pattern of taking care of what's going on outside of me became a way of experiencing reward. It also became a way of hoping that I would get something back. So in other words, this transaction of, if I do for others, then they might do for me. And as you might imagine, that becomes problematic because everything becomes transactional, and it doesn't become authentic, and it's not from a pure energy of flow. And so for me, this pattern basically, it kind of evolved. And so what would happen is that my desire to be there for others, and my constant focus on being there for others and taking care of others, would create a resentment. And that resentment was that nobody is there for me. And that would be the story that I would tell others, is that nobody's there for me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody does anything for me. And that was in response to, I'm there for everybody. And as I dug into that and tried to kind of uncover what was really going on, another pattern kind of emerged, and that was that the truth of it was that I'm there for everybody but me. So I was developing a way of, I'm taking care of others, but I'm not taking care of myself. And at the time of understanding what was going on, I really realized that I had no clue of what it was like to take care of myself. I had no sense of what self-care was about. I would talk about self-care. It was a great concept, but I had no deep understanding of what self-care really was. And So, in order to shift that pattern, I had to change that story to something along the lines of that I'm there for me first. And the moment that I started to put myself first, then that pattern started to erode. And I call myself a recovering people pleaser. There's still parts of me that want to do for others as a manifesting generator, and generators have this as well. We're here to do what lights us up, and being lit up lights others up. And so that can kind of impact people pleasing. And I'll save that for the video specifically about people pleasing. So really just wanted to bring attention to this idea of patterns that play out in our life. And there's all sorts of different patterns that play out. Like some people like to need to control their environment. Um, Others might have a pattern called, I've done something wrong. There's so many, and these can be, um, like I said, creating the narrative of our life. So I think I'll leave it there. Just wanted to give you some food for thought, something to think about. If you can relate to people pleasing, and I know that the people pleasing one is a very common thread for many, please drop a line in the comments. Would love to hear from you, and I'll happily respond. Yeah, so hopefully this gave you some food for thought. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll be back again soon with another topic.